Thank you to our musical accompaniment. All right, give her a hand.
Give it up for the Skelter Theater and the wonderful David Johansen. Welcome to Skelter Storytelling Extravaganza Tres. It's great to have you here, and thanks for getting out in the weather. We have 8 wonderful storytellers today, and our wonderful guitarist, Mr. Doug Pulfer, and we'll be breaking after the first 4 performers, so sit back and enjoy yourself. And thanks for coming. I'm going to be your first storyteller today. And the name of my tale is, Who's the Bad Guy? So in the world of wrestling, not the Olympic kind, the entertainment kind, there's always a good guy and a bad guy, right? And in the USA, the good guy's called the face, right? And the bad guy's the heel. Here in Mexico, Lucha Libres, good guy is Técnico, bad guy is La Ruda. But you know, it really doesn't matter what country you're in or what you want to call it. Which is the more interesting role? Bad guy. So there's this young man named Samuel Polinsky, and he was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1989 into a wrestling family, so he had to be a wrestler. And he always dug the bad guy thing. I mean, it's just more fun, and it lends itself to over-the-top behavior. So he was 220 pounds, good-looking, hunky, and talented. And he got a break that not many folks do. He got into the equivalent of the Bush Leagues for the WWE, that's the World Wrestling Entertainment Association, that's run by our modern-day P.T. Barnum in the United States. His name is Vince McMahon. But unfortunately, he had a knee injury, and he lost that opportunity. So in spite of his looks and his size and his talent, he just kind of chugged along in his professional wrestling career, working the independent circuits in the United States and in Europe. And he had this character, and the name of the character was Sam Adonis. And this character was a really vain, braggartly guy who steals your girlfriend. So he actually gets a gig in Mexico City in a wrestling show, and he does well enough where he gets an offer from Mexico's main and oldest wrestling organization. So he brings the character of Sam Adonis to Mexico City, and you know, he does good. You know, I mean, he gets his booze and stuff, but he's just feeling meh. You know, really uninspired and kind of middle of the crowd, kind of just blah. So one night over cervezas with his fellow lucha libres, it starts out as a joke, it morphs into a dare, then a why the F not, then a you loco gringo, and he becomes inspired. And the next Monday, he goes to the bosses and he asks if he can make a couple of tweaks to the character of Sam Adonis. They give him the green light. The next Saturday night at the big Lucha Libre Arena in Mexico City, the new Sam Adonis comes out. So the fans are booing, of course. Either they remembered his character or he's a bad guy and you're supposed to boo. No biggie. And it takes a minute till they see that there's something a little bit different going on. He's actually brandishing a prop this week, kind of aggressively. And the Mexicans sort of, you know, get their sea legs and realize he's carrying a giant American flag. Oh, did I say that this was mid-November 2016? Yeah. So they're like, out, 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 out. And he he's loving it. I mean, he's just feeding off this energy, right? Grins, jeers. And then they really focus on the flag and come to realize that this old glory has been augmented to sport a giant smirking face of the newly elected president, Senor Donald Trump. Chinga tu madre! Chinga tu madre! Which, F you. And I don't mean just a small group of drunks. No, I'm talking about the whole stadium. Sober people, children, grandmas. Chinga tu madre! And Sam turns and he sticks his muscular butt out at the people, and his spandex pants have a new augmentation of another Trump face right here. Chinga tu madre! They're apoplectic. The match has not even started. So the match does start, and Sam Adonis cheats. The ref keeps turning his head, and every time he does, Sam hits below the belt, or he picks up his flag and he starts bludgeoning his opponent on the head, in the crotch. The people are going insane. The security on the floor is truly earning their keep that night. They are holding the rabid Mexicans back. They're cursing, they're spitting, they're throwing popcorn and drinks, their veins are popping, they're going nuts. So he continues to cheat, fingers in the eyes, and the ref keeps missing it. And he hurls the Mexican out of the ring and onto the floor. And now, everything I tell you, it ratchets up energy-wise, and they're like, and he jumps out of the ring and he goes up to the Mexican on the floor and he sticks his Trump face right in his face. And then he jumps back in the ring and he begins to celebrate, even though the match is only half over. And he's got the flag over his head and he's going from corner to corner, standing up on the ropes with the flag. And the Mexican is woozy and he's standing there all weak. But he's starting to rally, and he's getting more anger and more energy. And the technico can take no more of this gringo's disrespect. He approaches Sam from behind. He grabs the flag out of Sam's hands. He throws it on the stage and he dances on it. The people go nuts. They switch between screams and cheers. Sam's caught flat-footed, and the Mexican is now in his zone. And he does a running headbutt into Sam's gut, and he does a tope and a plancha and hammerlocks and chokeholds and multiple face slaps, which really gets him going. And then he takes Sam and he donkey kicks him out of the ring in a perfect horizontal flight. Bam! And then the Mexican chases him out, and he drags Sam back in by his pretty boy hair into the ring. And Sam's like got little birdies flying around, he's got no energy. And, the Mexican has become the Mexican Incredible Hulk by this point, right? And he starts airplaning Sam, the classic wrestling move where you pick him up by the ankles and spin him around 3, 5, 8 times, and then he just lets him go, and he flies into the ropes and just crumples onto the ground. And then the Mexican stands on him like a mighty hunter, and the crowd is just screaming and screaming. And then he goes for the kill. And after whipping up the crowd one more time, the Mexican body slams Sam, and then he pins him in 1, 2, 3. The Mexican wins. Yeah. The room explodes. The building is literally shaking. The walls, the seats, the floor, shaking. Insanity. And Sam is trying to look beaten and sad. but inside he is elated. So after the show, when Sam comes out of the locker room, there's kind of a mob waiting for him. We love you. Thank you. That was so good. That was so fun. We needed that so bad. We'll see you next week. Cece, we love you. Photos, hugs, autographs. And Sam, the giant villain, just says, muchísimas gracias. Estoy humillado. I am humbled. Thank you. Our next performer was in our premiere show 2 months ago. And one of these days I'm going to find out what kind of doctor he is. But this gentleman has had a lot of experiences and has a lot of opinions and stories, and I love him. And the name of his story tonight is The Flypaper Salesman. Let's give it up for Dr. David Stea.
That's definitely a hard act to follow. So all I have to say is, chinga tu madre. However, this is not a story about Mexico. This is actually a story about New York. And a young boy in New York. When I say New York, most of you think about a large city, sort of like Mexico City, and it's called often the Big Apple. I call Mexico City the Big Mango. And the boy lived out the parts of New York not so well known are some of the most rural areas of North America. And they're made up of poor farms. And this boy was a poor boy, but he wasn't a farmer. He wasn't even from a farming family. But he was very concerned with animal welfare. Now, the farms were too poor actually to feed their domestic animals. They didn't have money to buy dog food or cat food or anything else like this. So he said, well, I will put together a business. And that business is going to raise the funds for a carnival. And the carnival money will then go to buy food for the animals to last through the winter. And so he had to think about, now what are the things that most likely, most of the farms didn't buy anything. They raised the stuff they needed or made it. But there was one thing that every farm had to buy, and that was flypaper. Now, nobody is in the business of a cottage industry of making flypaper, but for those of you that don't know about flypaper because you're too young, too well, anyway, whatever it may be, flypaper comes in a little cylinder, and you pull off the end of the cylinder and unroll this sticky paper stuff, and then you take a thumbtack and you stick it on the ceiling, depending on how large a place you have or how many flypapers you're accustomed to having. You put those up there, and every house has them. And they are distinguished because when you walk into the kitchen, you hear this horrible buzzing noise, and some of the flies have already died, so it smells bad. And that means that farmers have to restock their flypaper periodically. So I said, this is going to be my business, and this is how I'm going to raise the funds for the carnival. And so I started a flypaper business. And I would buy flypaper. There were 2 stores in the town. The town had a little under 100 people. And 2 stores both sold flypaper, and they sold it wholesale. I could get 2 flypapers for a nickel. So I borrowed money from my parents, and I started the flypaper business, buying 2 flypapers for a nickel and selling them for a nickel a piece. Now that's a lot of profits. Now those of you who are business people and all things, I want to tell you, to show you that even a 9-year-old knows how to sell things. So the other thing that I was lacking, I would walk along the dirt road, which is the main road of the town, and stop at the houses, but they didn't know when it was coming. I had no advertising. So I needed to think about advertising. This was the era, talking about the late 40s, early 50s. This was the era of radio. Remember radio? It was a box that you put, you know, and you stuck in big glass tubes in the back and things like that. Radio was also characterized by singing commercials. Singing commercials, and I thought, this is what I need. If I can walk along the road and I can sing commercials, then people will know I'm coming and they'll have their nickels ready and whatever they need in order to buy my flypaper. And I'd sell a lot. And so I made up, actually, I didn't really make up, actually, I plagiarized the music, but the words I made up were, I think, very original. Like, Big Chief Flypaper hits the spot, doo-dah, doo-dah, 5 cents a piece, that's not a lot, all the doo-dah day. Come and join the throng, bring your money along. Big Chief Flypaper hits the spot, all the doo-dah day. And that was a rousing success. So a little less than I wanted, but anyway, so in order to provide a little variety in this area, which didn't really have much, I just wrote another singing commercial. There is a big chief in our town, that's why there's not a fly around. Just the other day, I heard a feller say that the flies here abound as thick as clay. So people knew we were coming, that would be pretty popular, and I began to make a fair amount of change. And after a while, there was enough surplus that my friend or friends and I could go down to one of the two stores, one was Silverstein's and the other was Goldstein's, and buy a half gallon of Neapolitan ice cream, which we would get a couple of spoons, and then we could sit down on the curb and eat the ice cream. And that was a reward for what we did. We put away the rest of the money to fund the carnival, which we set up. Now, I didn't have a vast amount of money, so it was made up of the pieces of cardboard and recycled lumber and other things too. And because we had a radio, we could have background music while we were putting it together. So the carnival was quite successful. We made up enough money in the first year to be able to get a year's worth of dog food. In the second year, we got a year's worth of dog food and a year's worth of cat food. And that's as far as it went. Now, this is a story it actually brings tears to my eyes. It's almost too romantic. I have to say, by the way, that I did not get any offers for songwriting out of this activity, but at the same time, now that was something like 70 years ago. Now 70 years ago, everything has changed. Now all of the animals that we fed are gone to the next world, and most of the people have gone to the next world as well, and all we have is memories of the games on our carnival, and the games were mostly modeled on Coney Island and such. There are other things that have changed too. I mean, the farms have collapsed, the houses also have collapsed, some of them, others converted into B&Bs. And then we would ask ourselves, and so forth, what has in the long run come out of this? Now, at the time of the second carnival, I decided to commemorate this by planting a tree. So I had a little tree it was a pine tree about this size. Pine tree about that size. And I planted the pine tree and did not have a chance to come back and see it again for 34 years. And that's when Sylvia and I brought our daughter up to see where I had spent part of my childhood. And this was the most extraordinary experience of my life, and unquestionably the greatest accomplishment, because I looked at the tree and then I bent my head back further and further and further, and I could not see the top of it. So there is the great success of my life. By the way, there is no, as far as I know, there is no Nobel Prize for tree growing, but if there were, I would certainly have gotten it.
It's there. All right. Those of you who came to our show last month know this next lady. She brought us home with her wonderful jade egg story. This lady's from down under, and tonight she's going to tell us how I got here to San Miguel. Or is it how I got to Mexico? Whatever. I give you Miss Margot Duell.
Hi everyone, I thought I'd change the tone a little this time round. So this is a story about those times in your life where you feel like the big billiard cue of life has just shot you in a direction that you really hadn't intended to go, and you have a choice. You can go with that trajectory of the ball, or you can try to get yourself back on track. So it was 1993, and I was living in Santa Barbara, California, with my beloved boyfriend, and I had to return to Australia because I had a minor medical emergency. I needed some surgery, and in Australia we have free healthcare, so it was a no-brainer to go back. So I was back there for 2 months, and I befriended an Australian artist who'd been researching exotic locations to paint and to be Paul Gauguin, basically. He was going to marry a Mexican woman. San Miguel was the place. Now, Australians back in those days weren't really focused on Mexico. We didn't know a lot about it. And I had studied Mexican history. I knew a little bit about it. But I was going back to Loveland in Santa Barbara. And Stuart was really pressuring me to buy a ticket. He said, look, you got your ticket back, and there's this Discover America ticket where you can fly around America for $600, go to 4 places, end up in Mexico and meet me. Do it. So after a bit of pressure, I thought, why not? You know, may never use it, but I bought the ticket. So I get back to Santa Barbara, and I'm sort of doing this really fast-paced because it's a long story, so excuse the racehorse sort of quality to it. But anyway, things fell apart in Santa Barbara on arrival. My boyfriend had found something, or should I say someone else, to do. Fell apart really quickly. In my pocket, I had that ticket. I had that ticket to ride. And I was at that point where I could either run back home, and all my friends, come back home. Mexico's mad, bad, and dangerous. You'll come home in a body bag. Please come home. But I packed up my life. I wasn't going to do it. So I rode that ticket. So I cried my way around America. I picked destinations where I knew friends originally, so San Francisco, New York. Very vulnerable, very sad. Got down to New Orleans where I didn't know anybody, and I didn't have a plan again. So I had a look at the notice board at the airport, picked a hotel. It was called the La Salle on Canal Street, black-owned hotel. Wandered out into the street, did not see one white person. I had no idea what planet I was on. Asked someone, what's up? And it turned out to be the night of the Bayou Classic, where there's a whole lot of black college football. There's a big match. All the black colleges from the South gather in New Orleans. So I was really the only white person walking around that town that night. I've got to sort of skate over New Orleans a bit, or I'll get the flashing light in my eyes. But the next day I went into a vintage clothing store on Decatur, and there was a really sort of magnetic woman standing, gussing up a sort of costume in the front. And she had a bouffant hairdo, 2 Pomeranians sort of somehow clutched to her breast while she was doing this, aqua eyeshadow, dressed very Edwardian style, and she sort of beckoned me in. Turns out her name was Princess Pachuquet, for real, and she was a dolly bird from the 60s who'd worked on the cruise ships from London. And somehow she just washed up New Orleans and set up, and had a beautiful life there. So we started speaking, and she was very impressed that I spoke the Queen's English and I was of the Commonwealth. And she said, darling, you really can't stay at the La Salle. You know, it's a knocking shop. And I said, well, everyone's really nice to me. And she said, let me think. I have a little pied-à-terre in the quarter that I keep for my mother when she comes from London. Come and stay. I'll charge you $50 for expenses. I'll show you where all the great cafes are. You'll have a bicycle. Why not? So New Orleans embraced me. In those 3 weeks that I stayed with the princess, I just had the best time, and I thought, wow, I could stay here. I could feel my heart starting to lift. I wasn't crying every day. I loved it. It was just my kind of town. And the princess took me out on secret missions. I haven't got time to tell you the story. Read the book. Anyway, eventually I had to leave. The ticket was running out, and she said, look, why don't you stay? We get on well, you love this place, you can work with me. It was a very tempting offer, but that ticket was burning a hole in my pocket, and there was just something pulling me. It was a call to adventure. I didn't know why I needed to do this, but there was a pull on me. It was like a current. So I got to New Orleans airport, and they looked at the ticket and they said, ma'am, this ticket's only valid for the 52 states. You can't enter Mexico on this ticket. And it turns out that it was actually a dodgy ticket that my friend's questionable travel agent had written for me, but I bought it in good faith. So we had a little argument, and they said, well, look, your next destination's Dallas. We'll put you on the plane and you can do with the Delta counter at Dallas. So that's what I did. It was already quite late at night. Got to Dallas, same thing. They had a powwow. They really didn't know what to do with me. This is the pre-9/11 world. Somehow a kind of portal opened up for me that I still can't, it's incomprehensible how this happened. They came out and they said, ma'am, in this case, we'll honour the ticket. And they put me in first class with my backpack. So the next bit is I arrived in Mexico. Now I'd been given a number of Maru, who was a Mexican lesbian, and at that time the lover of my friend in New York, who was also a lesbian. Anyway, I was to stay with her. That was my one contact in Mexico. I was on the ground at 10 o'clock at night, pushed the button, got the green, out in the foyer, and I rang the number I had, and it just kept ringing out. I had no address, I didn't know where she was. There were two women who'd been watching me, and they'd been on the same flight from Dallas, and they came up and, you know, they could see that I was agitated and they were concerned. They said, are you okay? I said, no, I'm not. And they said, well, why don't you come with us tonight to our suite in the Zona Rosa, in the Marco Polo, and tomorrow you can call your friend. So this was Luisa and Julia, who turned out to be two principessas from Napoli. And the husband of Julia was teaching at UNAM, and the mother, Luisa, had come from Napoli. So we had a beautiful night together, and the next day I spent 24 hours with the Mexico City elite. Encantada, encantada. I was hanging out with the priestess, very charming, lovely people, and you know, I had no language, I had no plan, I had very little money. I finally rang my friend and my contact, and she said, well, I've been at the airport, but I'm so short that you probably didn't see the sign. The economy had just crashed on my arrival. Maru, the lesbian, was a banker, and she was extremely anxious and distressed about everything, and really not happy to be entertaining a sort of suddenly newly wealthy gringo. And, you know, there was sort of tension there. I didn't really enjoy it, and I thought, I've got to get out of here. So I went for a walk, and I'm walking around Mexico City, blown away by the, I got the flashing light. I was going to miss the best bit. I walked into Sanborn's, and I kid you not, in Sanborn's, I met a shaman. Now you read about this in books. This man spoke to me and said, the man who you've just met, and he absolutely described my ex-partner, is not a warrior. You are. You are here for a reason. Mexico will heal your heart. This is where you are to go. This is who you will meet. Do not fear. And I recalled a dream I'd had when I first studied Mexican history 30-something years ago. And I said, well, I feel like we're a couple of old brujas. And he said, well, we were. and it will be a long time before we ever meet again. I thought, this only happens in books. Really happened. There was no here's my phone number baby stuff, you know. Extraordinary. And so the next day, I got on the bus for Veracruz and spent 3 months travelling alone on second-class buses. Healed. The beginning of my healing had begun. That was a rush version. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to take it down a notch. This next piece is dedicated to the 11 victims. In Pittsburgh, at the Tree of Life Synagogue. And also in gratitude to the wonderful Muslims who really stepped up. It's a long title, and I don't remember it, but it's about a young man named Muhammad, and a wonderful presenter who was a teacher and a principal and saw everything, did everything in the New York City school system. Is here to tell a tale about young Muhammad. Give it up for Kayla Fine.
Just want to make sure I'm in the right spot. Okay. So, the title of this is Common Ground, Muhammad's Teachings, Chapter 1. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So, it was a Friday afternoon in 1998. And Muhammad walks into my office, slams what appears to be a gun on my desk, and says, "Miss, take this. I'm going to kill myself or somebody else." And I'm like, whoa, Muhammad, what is this? And he picks it up, points it to the ceiling, pulls the trigger, and oh my God, it's awful. But not as awful as it could have been. The gun was a switchblade, not a gun. I flashed back to the first day I met Muhammad. His father, Abdo, this gorgeous, really, incredibly sexy, strapping man who was the owner of the deli that I went to every day and handed me my coffee saying, "Hey baby, here's your order." Walks in with this shadow of a son, skinny shadow of a son, who's clutching a little book, and he says, "Hey baby, my son just arrived from Yemen. Can you enroll him in the school? We gotta find a school for him." And I turn to Muhammad and say, "Hi Muhammad." And Muhammad says, "Miss, I love to study and learn. That's why I'm reading this science book. I want to be a doctor someday." Well, knocked this educator over with a feather. Of course, I enrolled him on the spot. It was obvious to me from the many visits Muhammad made to my office how much he missed his mother. He told me tales all the time of the village, the rural village in the mountains of Yemen, where he had grown up. Basically, it was a village without men because they had all gone abroad. They had all gone abroad to work and send money home, come occasionally to visit, and hopefully make their wives pregnant again, and then go back to work. Muhammad was like all the other Yemeni boys in the school. At the age of 15, his father called him over, wanted to send him to school so he could learn English and work in his deli. So now I fast forward again, and I said, "Muhammad, what's going on?" And he said, Miss, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I'm so stressed out. I want to die or kill my father. He went to Yemen last week to marry another woman. He's taking a new bride, and all the money is going to go to buying her jewelry and a condo or an apartment in Sana, the capital city, and all her fancy new clothing. And oh my God, it's my turn. This is not a father. He's supposed to be sending me home. All the other 10th grade boys are going home to get married this summer, and they're going to get their new brides pregnant, and I'm going to be here left alone as a bachelor. And besides, not only that, he's marrying this woman, and there are all these women calling the house, and I'm finding out I have all these brothers and sisters all around Brooklyn. And one of the moms says, "Cop," and I think she's going to come and kill me. She's asking me for money, and I don't have any money. And what about my mom? What about my mom and my brothers and sisters? He's going to stop sending her money. I'm going to have to send her money. And it's terrible. He doesn't treat me like a son at all. I'm living on a cot with all the other workers downstairs, and they hate me because I'm his son, and he left them in charge of giving me money, and they're not giving me any money. And I'm living on Coca-Cola and GOT. Well, for those of you who don't know what GOT is, it's a chewable leaf that they use in Yemen to suppress hunger in children, to achieve a state of kef, which is getting high. It's a class 4 drug. It's classified by the Drug Enforcement Agency as is heroin, and it's used by warlords in the Middle East, really specifically Eritrea, Ethiopia, Yemen, to urge on and incite their young boy soldiers to violence, and when used excessively, leads to suicidality. So here I am in my office with a suicidal, possibly homicidal, agitated teen. And what am I supposed to do, according to the Department of Education in New York City? I'm supposed to call the cops. And if I call the cops, this sweet, sensitive boy who is really, stressed out to the max, they're going to come process his weapon, and they're going to take him to a hellhole of a hospital, Kings County. This is the hospital for the homeless. It's in the bowels of Brooklyn. It's for the indigent, and it is disgusting, and no one ever goes to Kings County if they can avoid it. And not only that, when he gets to King County, because he's potentially homicidal and a psych patient, they're going to put him in a cage, I kid you not, with all the other homicidal psych patients. Why? So that they'll kill each other instead of any of the other patients or the personnel. I can't do this to a 16-year-old child. So instead I think of Zainab, and I think I'll call Zainab. Now I knew Zainab. She was the director of the Arab American Family Support Center. And I knew her because I had called her the year before when I noticed we had a lot of Arabic boys, but not one girl. So I called her up and I said, "Can you come and visit my school? I'd like you to see what the school is about and tell you about it." And she came, and I told her what I had seen, that we didn't have any girls there. And I assured her that we had no dress code, that the girls could wear hijabs or not as they pleased. Because we had a 30% Muslim population in the school, we served no pork. We had an Egyptian librarian and interpreter who worked who worked for us, and on top of that, the PTA president was a Muslim. So maybe she could reassure the Muslim families of Brooklyn that this was a safe place for their daughters to go. Well, actually, the Muslim families were coming, just not the Arabic. The Pakistani and the Bengali were already there. The girls were there. Now, I want to mention this. Zainab and I quickly sussed out that she was a Palestinian American and I was a Jewish American, and that we were also really pro, girls' rights. And we also understood immediately, through conversation, that we would put aside all politics, all ideologies, even though we both had relatives still living in Palestine and Israel, because what was the most important? The children of Brooklyn and their families, and educating them. So, I also, on top of that, literally owed Zainab my life. The year before then, I woke up one morning around 3:30 to chuffing helicopters, and also to searchlights actually coming through our windows. Why? Because about 2 blocks away was where there was a house well, an apartment really, with two men who had been planning to blow up the Atlantic Avenue subway station. A subway station I went through every day on my way to work. How had this plot been foiled? One of the neighbors got wind of this plot, an Arab neighbor, and he went to the director of the Arab American Center and said, I can't bear the thought of all these innocent people dying, please help me. And she contacted the authorities and got them together and they worked this out. And it was the day of the planned bombing that plan was foiled. So who better than to call Zainab? She was the biggest advocate for the community I could think of. I called her, she invited me to her office with Mohammed. We arrived, she greets us, with Salam Alaikum, and we greet her back, Mohammed and I, Alaikum Salam, which means peace be with you and with you be peace. And then I walk into her office and I see a poster, and the poster says, 100 years from now, it won't matter the size of my house, my car, or my bank account. What will matter is what I meant to a child. Exactly. Our common ground. And then Zainab looked at me and said, don't you need to be getting home for Shabbat? She was very concerned. And I said, that's okay. In Judaism, we have a loophole where we don't have to follow the rules when it comes to saving a life. So I'm here to make sure Mohammed is safe. To be continued.
All right, let's kick off our second half. And before we get going, let's give it up for the wonderful Skelter Theater. All right, I am very excited about our next presenter. A little bit different, first time here at Skelter Storytelling Extravaganza. This gentleman, sure he's going to tell a story, but he's more about something else. This guy is 85 years young, and he is a magician to the United Nations. Let's give it up for Larry Mills the Magnificent!
Now I want you to be 3 years old. Get into your inner child. Okay, puzzle, hiya ho, namaste, ho ho, ha ha! I was supposed to tell a story, but I forgot. Okay. Once there was a little pig, a tiny little pig, and he wanted to eat watermelon. But there were no watermelons around. So we asked the magician, let's have a watermelon. Now, this one is Mama and Papa. And mother-in-law. And Mama and Papa, they want to have some fun. But mother-in-law is always in the way. And they said, well, we're going to go to the beach. And we're going to go and have a nice time at the beach. And could I have a magician assistant here? Let's give Dave Doug. Okay, Doug, would you hold your hands out like this, please? And would you please put this nice couple in your hands like that and do nothing except pray. And now, we have here a little, this is a hideaway. And we're going to take mother-in-law. We're going to put her, actually, let's not put her in the hideaway. Let's put her in jail. So she can't, mother-in-law should go into jail. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because we want to get rid of mother-in-law so we can have some fun. Okay? So let's go for mother-in-law. Woohoo! Okay, mother-in-law. Okay? Mother-in-law is in jail, right? So, but this is a magic jail. Look out in the front row because I'm going to have fun. Okay? Mother-in-law. Yeah, that's called audience participation. Now, where's mother-in-law? Mother-in-law is always in trouble because she's always there. Wow! You can't get rid of mother-in-law. Marvelously, magnificently. Now, let's see. Ooh. We got Darryl. Are you there? Come back again. Okay, we got another participation. Okay. Oh, Darryl, here you go. Now, you didn't know you were going to be assistant, but here we go. These are cities. And they're all crazy cities. Okay. And this is a crazy dark space. And so I'm going to take the dark space, and we're going to put the cities in the dark space. Because this one, we're taking one at a time. This one is full of anger, and this one is full of I don't know what. And this one, I don't know what. And this is for envy, and this is for I don't know what. And this is for whatever. You've got to be an innocent child again. Okay, now, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to go and have them meditate, because they're fighting all the time. Okay? And they're going to, so they meditate for 30 days and 30 nights. And guess what's going to happen? What the hell is going to happen? Oh, sugar. Yeah. Oh, sugar. Yeah. Okay. 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 Oh! They meditate and look. They're all together now. And they're holding hands. Thank you for it. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate your help. We're going to give help. We give a hand out. Let's meditate for another 30 days. Okay? And what we're going to do, go tell you, look in here, there's nothing in here except what's that? What's that? Oh my gosh! They really meditated for 30 days! Now they're all one! Hey! Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay! Ha! 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 And a bottle of rum. Now, let's see. Oh, this is a crazy one. This is kind of stupid. But you can be 3 years old because you'll enjoy it. Now, let's see. What the heck is that? What do you think that is? A duck. Oh, duck. Now, you're 3 years old, right? But, woohoo! But what happens if I do that? Oh. Now, that's for the kids, right? You're all kids. You're all kids, right? And so, we're going to put, what are we going to put in here? The duck or the rabbit, right? The duck or the rabbit, right? Okay? Duck or rabbit, right? All right, where's the duck? Where's the duck? You here? Huh? I don't know, yes. I don't know. So the rabbit's got to be here, right?
Yeah.
Ooh. You like that? Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Now. Oh, I should go like that and then show that, but I didn't. So, this is a little red ball. It's not much of a story. There's a little red ball. Which hand is the little red ball in?
Left.
This one. Sorry. You like that?
Sure.
What's in here?
Red.
A little red rabbit? No. Ha ha. Gotcha.
It's a red.
Aha. Okay. Okay. Now let's see what we got. Whoa. We got a story of a castle. A magic castle. And this castle has, this castle has nobody in it except people in the shade, in the basement, okay, in the basement of it. The basement. Whoa! And but there's nobody else in here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to play with fire. Because I'm a kid and I'm only 3 years old. So we're going to tell a story about getting with the ghosts. The ghost out of the dungeon. Okay? Kind of crazy story, couldn't imagine. No. Oh! Oh, okay, come on. Okay, over here. Okay. Those are the ghosts. Okay, would you do me a favor? Would you give this to this pretty little lady here? And this little pretty lady, you give it to your neighbor, and you go to give it to the other neighbor. Just go out and participate. Go on, get the ghost going. Let's get the ghost going. Keep on going, baby. Keep on going. Let's get it fast. Let's go on. Pass it down. All the ghost. Hey! Hey, thank you so much. And with all the ghosts are going. All the ghosts. Thank you. Woo. And there's nobody here but just the ghosts, right? Yeah. Well, what do you know? Let's see what else we got. Woohoo! Yeah, what about you? Okay. Woo! There's more here. I love to be 3 years old. Thank you. Now. This one. Very interesting. This one. Cha. This is for Mama, and Papa, and Baby. Now this is more crazy. This is Papa. This is Mama. And this is Baby. Okay. We're going to do that is Daddy Juju. This is Mama, and this is Papa, and this is Baby. Woo. This is Papa. Okay, now. I got no strings to hold down to make me fat or make me frown. No one has strings but now on me. There are no strings on me. Hi ho, daddy-o, nothing every road is me. 'Cause I got no strings to hold me down to make me fat or make me frown. Woo-hoo! You like it? I like that too, but I don't know about the story. Mama, Papa, and Baby, they all wanted to be equal. And Mama and Papa wanted to be equal, right? But this is a magic trick. This is magic. And you're all 3 years old still? You still got any time. Because they're not only going to be equal, they're not only going to be equal. They're all going to be. What the heck is going on? What the heck is going on?
Give it up for Larry the Magnificent! Our next performer, first, those of you who've been here before know that I'm a fan of interesting and exotic accents. And I gotta say, this guy takes the cake. He's gonna beat our down under lady with his accent. This wonderful gentleman is from South Africa. And the name of his story is The Teresa Terror Tease. Give it up for Daryl De Jager.
First time for me on stage in front of a full house audience. And I want to share a story about my experience about my first visit to the United States of America. In South Africa and the rest of the African continent, nothing really works. America, it's bigger, it's better, and it works. And it was a culture shock for me. A friend of mine, Rion Miller, phoned me and said to me, he's an Afrikaans speaking friend, Darryl, come to New York, which is brother. Things here are very lekker. You're going to like it here in New York. And he booked me a ticket. And I arrived in a town called Riverhead on Long Island. And it was just like in the movies. Really, it was clean, fixed roads, stoplights that worked. We have what we call buckies, you call them pickups. We have like Isuzu and Toyota, and they were Ford F-150s, F-250s, F-350s, double axle. There was the Suffolk Theatre, beautiful pubs, and friendly people, and right next to where we stayed was an aquarium. I couldn't believe it. And outside were these seals, and you could go and speak to them, and they would be happy to see you. And I was really, the Americans are so patriotic. They got flags above their doors, really just like in the movies. And the house we stayed in was this lovely wooden house on the corner next to the aquarium. And the ground floor was the offices of the Pine Barrens Society. And we stayed on the second floor and third floor. We were 4 gentlemen from South Africa. And I met this wonderful woman, her name was Teresa. Super friendly, always helpful. And she said to me, Darryl, Saturday at noon I'm taking you for a tour to the wine farms north of Riverhead. I said, very cool. Saturday morning, early, 9:30, I was awake. And I took a walk down to the local steakhouse. They had a special buy a hamburger and get a craft beer, buy 1, get 2 free. So 9:30 I was there, the lovely bar lady Dawn was waiting and she opened up and I was the first customer, had my hamburger, had my craft beers, the ones right at the bottom of the fridge, so Dawn would bend over and get them for me. And I understand the concept when people talk about the crack of dawn. And I spent a good 2 hours there, and I looked at the time, it was 11:30, thought let me head back to the house and get there before Teresa arrives. And I had a good couple of craft beers down there. I mean, 1 buy 1 get 2 free. I was really crafted. I had a takeaway in my bag. Those nice ones, you know, with a wire that you flip it and the lid pops off. It was in my bag and I sipping it all the way home. And as I got around the corner, in the garden was the chairman of the Pine Barrens Society, busy opening the front door. And there was Teresa, her back to me, and she had a little dachshund, a sausage dog called Snickers, and Snickers was in the garden. And I thought, well, let me surprise Teresa. And I would smack her buttocks. The chairman of the Pine Barrens Society wouldn't see me because he was busy trying to open the front door. And Teresa's back was to me, it was perfect. And I saw her buttocks there, she had these really tight nylon slacks on. And the whole scene, the setting was perfect for a little surprise for Teresa. I didn't take into consideration that I had drunk 1 too many craft beers. I had no idea of what speed I was approaching Teresa. I had no idea of the force and the power behind my left swoop. And my friend Luigi from Panarotti's Pizza, the Italian friend, said, Darryl, when you grab, you must give a little bit of a pinch. And I remembered that. And the timing was perfect. Teresa's back was still there. The chairman of the Pine Barrens Society was still opening the front door. And I ran and I connected a sweet shot. It sounded like a gunshot. Then everything went into slow motion. The chairman of the Pine Barrens Society was still opening his door. The light slap didn't seem to affect him. The sausage dog reacted to the slap. And bit into my ankle, like with vicious teeth into my ankle. That resulted in me not letting go of the buttock. The scream that came from the mouth of the person who owned the buttock where my hand was connected was not Teresa. The dasher now connected to my ankle was not Snickers. It was the wife of the chairman of the Palm Barrel Society. She was horrified. She shrieked, but I had my hand still connected to her buttock. I lifted her and placed her at the entrance of the door. She spun around, horrified. She began beating at me. The chairman of the Palm Barrel Society didn't even look up. He said, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. Still trying to figure out how to open the front door. I got the dash hound off my leg. I apologized profusely to the wife of the chairman of the Palm Barrel Society. And she was in shock. I had to really hard. She had my hand clenched on her buttock for a good couple of seconds. I had moved her over 1.5 meters to the front door. I said, sorry ma'am, I thought you were Teresa. I really am sorry. I got past, she wouldn't let me, and I said, no, I live here. My name is Daryl, and I'm so sorry. And I walked upstairs, and I put down my goodies, and I walked down out the back door. My friend was at the bottom, and I told him what had happened, and he was horrified. He said, Daryl, you can't do things like that. I said, I didn't know it wasn't Teresa. And it was about 15 minutes later, Teresa arrived, shared the story, she laughed. The chairman of the Palm Barrel Society walked down the driveway with his wife and the sausage dog. The sausage dog tried to attack me again. He had a smirk on his face. She had this expression like she had just breastfed a rattlesnake and was not happy at all. And just yesterday, the chairman of the Palm Barrel Society and myself celebrated 3 years friends on Facebook. Very happy to have known her. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Give it up for Daryl. Fantastic. Don't you love that accent? All right, 2 more storytellers. And the next one is a fan favorite, my illegitimate mother. Atea Marcos Amir, and her story is The Druze and I.
Okay, before I start, I know there are 2 questions on your minds. First of all, am I a natural blonde? The answer to that is very short, yes, I am. The second question is, why is she wearing that? So let me explain to you. I've been volunteering at the Bodega de Sorpresas at the Biblioteca. That's the flea market to you. And one day, my son was visiting me, my youngest son, and I found this dress on the rack, and I put it on, and I said, what do you think of this? And he looks at me and he says, it's okay if they're going to do a remake of Star Trek with you and Uhura. So of course I had to buy it. And because I'm not going out into the streets anymore in San Miguel because of the animals, this is the first time I'm wearing this and the last time you'll ever see me in it. Unless you want to come to my house. So, this story, The Druze and I, takes place in 1972. The reason I know this is because my youngest son was born in 1970 in Tel Aviv. And of all the bad ideas I've had in my life, this was the worst. After leaving his father, asking for a divorce when he was 7 months old, I went back to California and then got this bug up my butt that I should immigrate to Israel. I don't know why. I hated it when I was there. I never wanted to go. But maybe in the back of my mind was maybe we'll get together, back together. So I get to Israel, and my son celebrates his 2nd birthday in an Israeli kindergarten, which is called a gan. And I decide I need a job. So I find out there's an academic labor exchange and there's a non-academic labor exchange. So I go to the academic one and I tell them I'm a teacher, and they say, oh, good, good, good. There's a job opening in, I think it was Netanya, something like a half an hour from Tel Aviv. So I go there with the baby, who's 2, and we're on the bus, and there's this man sitting next to me, and he says, I'm a Druze. I'm not a Jew or a Christian. I'm a Druze. He says it with some kind of accent. I don't remember what. So I say, that's nice. He says, you know, when we get to Netanya, I have my own private car there, and I'll take you and your son to a hotel. Now, this was a long time ago, right? This is 47 years ago. I had no balls. I was very meek. I didn't really know how to say no to people. So I'd say, you don't have to do that. But he was very insistent. He kept saying, I'm a Druze. I'm not a Jew. I'm not a Christian. I'm a Druze. Okay. So we go back and forth on this a little bit. He keeps telling me he has a private car, and I keep telling him, not really necessary. But by the time we get to Netanya, and we get off the bus, there's his car. And I have to get into it with my baby. So he says, I'm going to take you to a hotel I know about. We go to the hotel, and he says, how do you like it? I said, I don't really like it very much. He says, that's okay. There's another one I'll take you to. So that seemed like a reprieve for me. So we went to the second hotel, and it wasn't so bad. So we go up to the room. He insists on going up to the room with me. And he says, so you take a shower and get dressed, and I'll be back to take you for dinner. And I said, no, not really. And he looks at me, and he says, not now? And I said, no. And then he says, not ever? And I go, yeah. And he bursts into tears. You would have thought that I was Angelina Jolie, and he was the Hunchback of Notre Dame. So there was this, what do they call it, that in Westerns, a standoff? There was a standoff that seemed like it lasted about a week and a half. It probably was only a few moments. And I can remember the door was over there, and I was over here. And I saw him walk to the door, and he opened it, and he closed it. And I went over to the door, and I went, oh, 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 thank you, God, thank you. Oh no, I think first I went over to the door and I locked. That was it. I made sure it was locked. I don't remember what my baby was doing. All of my children claim that I nearly killed them. One of my sons says that when we were in the Cotswolds, he was drowning in one of the lakes, and I was chatting up some English people. And another one says that when we were in Tlaquepaque, staying at an apartment that was around a swimming pool, his brother was holding his head underwater while I was chatting up some guy. So I don't remember where the baby was. But I know he's in Guanajuato right now with Sandra. So it all turned out okay. And please, for those of you who are politically correct, I have nothing against Druzes. This is the only one I've ever met in my life. So please, I say this because I just got kicked off the civil list for telling them that I hate animals. So you won't be seeing me, I won't be bothering you on the civil list. So thank you so much for being here. And now the performer of the evening.
All right. I love her. All right, one more performer, and I'm super excited about this guy. This one's a pro. This guy is a working actor. And by the way, he owns this theater. One more time for the Skelter Theater. This is John Wharton, and his story is called Osaka's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
So working actor in a while, but thank you for that. Yeah, I know this is going to come out of my precious 10 minutes, but I cannot resist giving a big round of applause for Leslie Bean for putting this together. We know that you got stories too, so you come up here and give us your best 10 minutes too. Tell your friends. San Miguel's got thousands of stories. We're all such interesting people. All right, to business. So everyone who's sitting here today has had, will have, or has now a parent who at some point needs a little bit of help in their life, a little assistance in their living, and so with the permission we have urged them to move into a special home with 24/7 care, good food, plenty of friends, plenty of social activities, wonderful. Maybe it's across town, we go to visit them someplace convenient, right? Worst case, across the state, can't visit them quite as often. My situation was a little bit more complicated because my stepmother calls me up one day when I'm living here in San Miguel. I've started Skelter Theater, and she says, I just had a terrible accident. Thank God nobody was hurt. But a very nice policeman came knocking on my door and said, I'll take your license, ma'am. And that was the end of that story. She said, I can't live in the United States, Washington, D.C. without a car. So I'm going back to the homeland where I speak the language, where I love the food, where I have plenty of friends, and that would be Tokyo. That makes visiting mom a little more difficult. But I was able to get over there a couple of weeks ago, and she's doing fine, thank you for asking. And I decided while I was over there, I would take the time to do a little exploring. I went down to the southernmost island of Kyushu, bought a 2-week Japan rail pass, great idea. If you're going to Japan, please do that. Wonderful island with great hot springs in Kyushu. My last stop was going to be Osaka. So there I am, zipping along at 185 miles an hour, sitting next to a businessman on my way to Osaka. And I'm thinking, I don't know anything about Osaka, and I know our B-29s did a pretty good job of decimating any kind of historical landmarks the city had. Everything there is new and not all that interesting. So I turn to him and I say, Osaka wa miru tokoro arimasu ka? I worked in Japan, so I'm okay with the language. And he said, Dotonbori. I said, what's that? He said, just go, you'll understand it. It's a section of Osaka, and it's really the only interesting thing to see in Osaka. So I check into my hotel near Osaka Station, I look on the map, and I find that Dotonbori is about 2 miles away. Not a great walk, but in Japan you always enjoy walking. There's always something interesting to see. So about 6 o'clock at night, I decided to set out and I walked through the business district and the residential area and all of that. And as I'm walking, I'm struck by how empty the streets are. Now, when I was working in Tokyo in the mid-'80s, Japan was one of the most crowded countries in the world, and I think maybe some of you remember this, right? Every time I would tell someone that I lived in Tokyo, they would say, don't all the people bother you? Isn't it the train's awful? I would say, yeah, it was terrible at that time, right? You adjust your hours to the crowds. But now Japan is depopulating and the streets are empty everywhere you go. And the reason is that you need a 2.1 replacement rate. That is to say, a couple, man and woman, have to have at least 2.1 kids, statistically speaking, to keep the population stable. Well, now Japan is down to 1.4, along with Italy, Spain, even Taiwan. There are lots of countries that are just depopulating. Japan, it's estimated in 50 years, if they don't get their act together, is going to disappear as a country. And you really notice that walking in the streets now, especially me, who's comparing it with 30 years ago. There's just no more people. So I'm walking through these quiet streets in the direction of Dotonbori, and I'm getting closer and starting to see some bright lights and interesting restaurants and all that. And I'm seeing some Asians walking the streets, and I hear their conversation. I realize these people aren't even Japanese. These people are Asian tourists. They're Chinese, Vietnamese, a lot of Koreans. And then I come to Dotonbori. And what Dotonbori is a shopping district, entertainment district. It's built around a canal. It's about as wide as the theater here, just enough space for these tourist boats to go down. And on either side are these magnificent, huge neon lights, just one giant sign for about 2 blocks going down. Hundreds and hundreds of people, hundreds of stores, and these lights are just blindingly bright. It's fascinating. Oh, it's only Japan can be that way. And then I hear the sound of music. And I look, and there's a little Japanese girl band, what they call J-pop. There's J-pop for these little Japanese girls, K-pop is the Korean version, right? And so there are these J-pop girls dancing, doing their little routine on the side of the river. And on the other side of the river are the people watching them. And I thought, oh, well, that's cute. They have their fans. This is a little girl band, you know, and they have their teeny bopper friends and all of that. And these girls are all dressed in what I swear are replicas of the costumes we remember when we bought our Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. Remember those? They look like drum majorettes. They're all in fluorescent sort of metallic glow material. And they look sort of otherworldly. Well, I watched them. I'm on that side of the river. The main audience is over on the other side, so I don't get a clear view of who that is, but I'm watching the routine. It only goes on for about another 10, 15 minutes, and the girls finish. Music stops. And instead of just disbanding, it turns out that's only part of the show. Now they've got to pay their bills. Well, they pay their bills with the audience on the other side of the canal. So then the girls, they take out these odd masks, and they are purposely expressionless. They're completely blank look, and they walk across the bridge onto the other side of the canal, where their fans are, right? So I thought, well, this is getting real interesting. So I follow this parade of faceless girls in Sgt. Pepper outfits over to see what they're going to do with the audience. And I get over there, and there are young men moving around with these placards. And on the placards it says, this is a paid photo opportunity session. No free photos allowed. Please see us if you want a photo with the girls. And if you try to take a photo of the girls as they're over there greeting their fans, they will come up and they'll block your camera. I have no idea what their legal right to this is, but that's what they did. So there were enough people there who would pay 1,000 yen, about $8, for these tiny little Polaroid cameras, the tiny little Polaroid pictures. Now, I don't know if you've seen the new version of the Polaroid picture, but they're tiny. They're the size of a business card. I don't know why they shrank them instead of making them bigger, but they're tiny. You can barely see the image. But anyway, that's what you get for your 1,000 yen. So it started with girls the same age, and we're talking maybe 14 to 19, something like that, maybe 18. And these girls, more or less their age, would come out and pose with them, and you could ask to pose with your favorite, or as many of them as you wanted, and there would be the little smiles and all the little routines, and it's something for them to put on their dresser at home, and ooh, one of these days I'm going to be a Sgt. Pepper girl too, right? So that was fine and healthy and wholesome and all that, and then I noticed that these older men started appearing. And I'm watching, and these guys are pretty rough around the edges, and they want to have their picture taken with these sweet young things as well. There's a guy standing next to me, and so I turned to him, and I just sort of said under my breath, I wasn't even sure he heard me, I said, you know, in America, we wouldn't allow this. And he said, I understand, I know what you're saying, but, ooh, am I okay time-wise? I understand, I know what you're saying, but this is Japan, it's a safe country, so don't worry. Everything's safe in Japan. And I'm saying, well, maybe superficially, but I'm a little less convinced of the safety of Japan after seeing this. He said, don't worry, it's very wholesome. And I looked, and sure enough, the guys who were going and posing with these girls, they were these sort of sad characters who couldn't get a date to save their lives, I'm sure. But I watched how they were with the little girls, and they were fine. They really weren't suggestive or rude, and it was sort of wholesome. It was like, you know, your uncle being there, who you kind of have to keep an eye on, maybe. And it got me thinking about Japan's depopulation and how maybe what's going on here, and the whole Me Too movement has got me, and maybe all of us, thinking along those lines, but maybe what's really going on here is that these men are to the point where they probably will never get married, they'll never have a family. They're obviously lonely, and what they're missing may be just the affection of a daughter, just be that sort of strength that, you know, a man gets with being in the presence of a young girl. In other words, every man wants to be a white knight, a hero to his daughter, and maybe that's what these girls represent to them, and maybe I'm overthinking it, thinking there's something unseemly about this, because the Japanese guy said, look, don't worry, we're aware of that possibility, we watch it, don't freak out. And I watched, and sure enough, the Japanese were fine with it. Nobody looked askance at it. And these guys, they would take their little photos and they would go off, and obviously this was a precious little token for them. And I don't believe that Japan has any higher rate of problems like that than any other country, but there was some obvious emotional need being met. It got me thinking, you know, maybe they are more aware of the human condition than we are, and maybe we are too quick to think the worst of situations like that. Maybe there's something healthy going on here. And maybe Sigmund Freud had it right that sometimes a cigar really is just a cigar. That's my Japan story.
Thank you, wonderful audience, and let's give our wonderful performers one more hand. Come on up. Doug, come on out. John, come back. Just, David, you can come and watch. We've got John here. Come on out. And Doug. We got Margo, we got Azalea, we got Kate. See you on the bottom.